Government corruption has never been more prevalent or caused more harm. It's why extremism is on the rise. It's why the financial gap between the haves and have-nots has never been wider. And it's why our planet is at risk of an extinction level tragedy. That's why I need your help to keep exposing the truth about the rot on both sides of the aisle. Become a supporter or a friend of the show today by clicking on the coffee link in the description box below. Friends of the show join me on a Zoom hangout once a month, and you guys can ask me any questions you want, and I can get to know you better. But the most important reason to help is to keep the show alive. Together, we can and will save our country and our planet. Thanks in advance and enjoy the show. So he has just been able to drag this divorce on now for 4 years.
So initially it was custody stuff, and and then once you're set up in that court system, you have to follow through with that system. And so the next step would have been mediation, which they told me was something like $10,000.
Oh, geez.
And then they wanted another $5,000 for a guardian ad litem for the children. And somehow I was supposed to come up with all of this, which of course I didn't have anything close to that.
Now, why would you have to pay all that if he's the one who's fighting the divorce? Why wouldn't he have to do that?
I'm not exactly sure.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm not exactly sure how that would have worked out had we gone forward, but there was nothing I could do. So I just left it sitting.
Wow.
And then by then I owed $15,000, and nothing, nowhere, there's no child support. There was just a vague thing of, put some of your paycheck into an account. And then of course he closed that account. I had no bank accounts or anything in my name, just, I had his bank card with his name on it, and that was the agreement. He just keeps putting money into an account that I had a card to with his name on it. And then he just closed that. And he did sort of put in money for a little while. It was under what it should have been, but at least it was sort of close for the first year. For the second year, it was a little less. And then right before J6, when he was super behind, he just threw in like thousands of dollars. It was really odd. So that also told me something weird was going on. And then he even put in a few thousand after. It made him nowhere near caught up. But I think in his mind, this was going to be the big last payment he ever made before he took to the hills or whatever he was going to do. And then that was it. The account closed
because
out.
I know he went on a big weapon buying spree after January 6th.
Yeah.
So it appeared that he was planning something.
Yeah. And I think one of those oath keepers had land in, I think it was Kentucky. And I believe there was some chatter that to me sounded like there was an eventual plan to cache weapons out there and maybe take to the hills.
Yeah,
or if they have hills in Kentucky, I don't know. Take to the woods.
Yeah, was it? Wasn't Jessica Watkins?
I think
it?
I think it was.
Yeah, I remember reading that in one of the affidavits that somebody had a bunch of land and that they were gonna, basically go off the grid.
And taking to the hills has always been, that's always been his plan. He's always wanted, there's always barrels where he thought he would, store gear and stuff and bury it. And, digging tunnels out to the Forest Service roads. And
I heard that too. You guys had tunnels on your property so that in case the feds showed up or something, he could just abscond.
And like most things, he gave up on them before they were too, but he did rent a backhoe and, played foreman. And then he basically had my teenage son digging them the rest of the time. They did go out to the cover of trees. So then he figured that was good enough. Wow. And he had this whole plan, through the tunnels and then to the cover of trees and then through the creek so the dogs can't track you. And then,
my gosh,
he had these unregistered cars. In Montana, there's permanent registrations you can get for cars. So you can buy a car and then just keep the old plate on it. And at first glance, it just looks like a, registered car. And a lot of these cars in the place that we lived in, this small, tiny little town, it was really common for people to never register cars and to just buy trade cars back and forth. And they would just call them Trigo cars. It's a Trigo license. And so they just pass cars around and never bothered to register, never leave the little area, which is a place where police don't usually go because it's kind of a lawless place.
Jeez.
So, yeah.
So did you guys own that property or you were renting it?
Yeah, we rented. Yeah.
Oh,
we never owned anything of value except for weapons ever.
Oh,
yeah.
geez.
He had odd thoughts about money. He almost seemed panicked when there was any money. Sometimes large amounts of money would come into Oath Keepers, and he would just want to spend it right away. And I honestly think it was a leftover from his childhood of, his mother had him working at 15 and she'd just take his whole paycheck, or if he bought anything of value, she would take that, eventually it would be taken away. So I think he had this weird mindset, and he refused to be, introspective at all about it and look at it like, oh, this is a habit from my childhood. Instead, he just let panic overtake him, and he would never want to buy anything of value. He would never want to own anything nice, but he would want to spend that money right away. And I think the idea was that if he spent it on experience or just blew it on some luxury thing, then it was his, and he could have, like dinners or personal clothing, weapons. He felt safe buying weapons because that's something he could always resell for almost the same amount of money. Yeah. So taking to the hills was always a thing. Then spending money, and he would spend it on just anything he'd want to. And sometimes he would, sometimes he'd come to town and just spend lavishly too on the kids. And it'd be like, well, let's all go out to dinner, and be like $200 or something.
Oh.
And, and yeah, logically I should have, you think, well, I should have said, oh, but the power bill's due. But
yeah,
first of all, you don't want to upset them. And the other part of it is, been living on food storage for a month. The kids want to do something nice, and usually he's in a good mood when he's in public, and so, and then you'd buy a bunch of stuff, and it was always, just odd spending, like $700 in groceries or something, and then there'd be no money for months. So it's just inconsistent. I don't know what he spent a lot of Oathkeeper money on. Sometimes it was just really expensive splurging. Like he sponsored a NASCAR at one point. I think that was over $100,000 for the Oathkeeper car. Yep. Driven by Jeffrey Earnhardt. Billboards. So he would spend money on ridiculous stuff like that. And although, honestly, when Stewart was spending money on NASCARs and billboards, and Oath Keepers did very well, and I think it's because the bulk of the membership, they don't want a civil war. They just want to join a team, and that was extremely popular. People liked that.
Yeah.
I think people just wanted, they wanted that sort of NRA level of activism. They want to join a club, buy a t-shirt, say that they support this group, chime in on a forum once in a while, like, oh, look, that's my group. We put up a billboard. Oh, look, that's true, the Oathkeeper car. And that's what they wanted. And it was really obvious Stewart was not about trying to make a living, or, because if that was the case, he would have stayed with that level instead of just taking things further and further and further. And the membership just dwindled when he started getting, more militant. They didn't like it. Very few people wanted to be a part of that stuff like that.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. So the numbers went down, but it became much more intense.
Yeah. And after Bundy Ranch,
the most crazy of the crazy.
I would say membership dropped probably around 70% after Bundy Ranch to almost nothing. Yeah. From 40,000 members to, I don't know what they were at that point, but I just know he was really struggling.